Hey there, party people! I've made a lot of videos on my original characters at this point, but not all of my original characters necessarily fit into specific series. So I'm going to make a series of my own, playfully taking a page out of a certain encyclopedia. This is, hopefully, going to be a series of videos where I talk about monster girls, focusing on one particular character that I create from a species that can be slotted into whatever series they can fit into, examples being Tensura or Monster Musume. However, I will also be going into some world building and biological aspects that fit specifically into a hypothetical fantasy series that would have all of these monster girls in them, generally being an amalgamation of all sorts of different lores and media, from anime to D&D and everything in between, while putting my own spin on it. So in this video, I'm going to be stating things as if they are fact, because they are to this world I'm imagining. Without further ado, let me introduce you to the first species we'll be covering: dragons.
Whoa, hey!
Based on a poll I had, people love dragons, which is an objectively correct opinion. The subject that we have today is a silver dragon named Grace. Long ago, all dragons used to be considerably larger and much more reptilian. But as humanity, elves, and various other humanoid races flourished, many dragons eventually adapted more humanoid forms themselves as a means of better cohabitation. They still maintained their might and power even in these new forms, though new generations born into this form find it harder and harder to shift into a quote-unquote true dragon, as some have come to call it. And as these quote-unquote true dragons still do exist, there were dragons that didn't adopt a humanoid form. A distinction is made to call the humanoid dragons Dracomen, though fundamentally they are the same species. And yes, that does mean that despite the partially mammalian appearance, a Dracoman like Grace is fully a cold-blooded reptile. What looks like the skin that you'd see on a human is more like snake scales, tiny scales that lay on top of one another, creating a smooth surface. As for the hair, well, hair, claws, and scales are more or less all made of the same thing, keratin. For Dracomen, it is purely ornamental and serves only aesthetic purposes. Coincidentally, Dracomen hair is also as tough as their scales, so getting a haircut is extremely difficult for them unless they happen to have mithril scissors. Thankfully for them, their hair grows very slowly. And also as a reptile, Grace and other dragon girls have no actual need for mammary glands, despite the appearance. Instead, they act as small fat stores, small specifically for icy elemental dragons such as Grace. Red fire-based dragons have much larger fat stores, as it assists with their fire breathing, and for black poison dragons, they're, well, poison sacs. So on and so forth with that kind of logic. Though, more than physical and elemental differences, each kind of dragon has their own cultures. Though, for today's video, we are mostly focusing on the general physiological and somewhat universal facts of dragons, leaning in a bit towards silver as that is what our subject, Grace, is. If you would like to know more about the specifics of all these dragons in further detail, just let me know by commenting down below and subscribing to the channel. Not only does it help me out a lot, but it also is the best indicator to let me know that you want to see more of this kind of content. And honestly, I would just be happy to make shorts or something about the overviews of the other dragon girls. But to continue on, while Dracomen aren't as large as their aesthetically reptilian counterparts, they can actually grow to gargantuan sizes over the span of their long lives. The power and might of a dragon can only be held by a small container for so long, though their growth process seems to help with this somewhat. Take Grace for instance. At the age of around 75 to 100, she is 4'9" and is considered a young adult, just about the equivalent to 18 to 20 for humans. Dracomen tend to stay small for a few centuries, generally staying around the height of the average human until they reach what dragons would consider old, which is just about 1,000. At that point, their heights can begin to exceed beyond most humans and will continue on. Ancient Dracomen can be the size of trolls or bigger, which is the largest that has been properly recorded, though some subspecies like silver dragons believe that the first of the Dracomen still lives and is a giant that sleeps in the core of the earth, having been a primordial dragon before making the shift to their humanoid form, and stayed that way as a sign of friendship with the, at the time, young humanoid races. Though, at the larger sizes, it becomes difficult to find a proper mate if one is not already had throughout the years. And each subspecies has different cultural systems that handle relationships, though Dracomen can more or less breed with most other species given their inherent magical nature, though it should be noted their genes are extremely dominant. And it should also be noted that most Dracomen don't truly have a concept of sexuality. As nearly timeless beings, such a thing doesn't really matter to them. As far as they're concerned, there is no distinct difference between a man and a woman being together and two women or two men being together. You could assign these distinctions to them as, for example, Grace likes for her partners to be only women, so you could call her a lesbian. But within their own cultures, dragons just don't have words for those kind of things, or even the ideas themselves. A couple is a couple, in the most literal, non-ironic sense. Love is love. There is no difference, despite the genders that make up the relationship. And to go further into relationships, many dragons will also have what is known as a bondmate with another dragon, though there are myths and stories of dragons bonding with other species. It is a special relationship where the souls are intrinsically linked, even beyond the mortal world and time. It is an extremely important ritual and denotion regardless of the culture. Though, that said, each culture will still have different ways of treating it on some level. Like with silver dragons, you can still have other partners alongside a bondmate, but with blue dragons, you will be exiled for such a thing, even if the bondmate themselves agreed to it. And with such different views on interpersonal relationships, you can bet each dragon subspecies as a whole have different societal makeups as a whole. Of course, like any society, there will be outlier individuals that don't fit into generalized notions such as Blue Dragon society is a theocracy and has a heavily religious culture. It should go without saying that doesn't mean every single blue dragon is super religious, but I feel the need to say it clearly given that nuance can be lost on future generations. But still, the point is that one dragon's societal makeup will be different from others. There are nomads and republics and individualists with more loose sense of culture, and even imperials, which is actually what silver dragons are, with Grace being the Princess Imperial. Though, as stated before, more info on that in a potential future short. But at that point, I believe that covers just about everything for the general overview of dragons. I mean, the only thing I can really think of is diets. And honestly, they're just what you'd expect. They're all carnivores, and as inherently magical beings, they can subsist on mana. No, not in the Fate or Encyclopedia way, stop that! Anyway, I do hope you did enjoy this kind of video. I know I enjoyed making it and getting all the art of Grace. A big thank you to the artist Alza for every piece of work. They are truly wonderful. Grace is actually my Pathfinder character, basically a reskinned dragon third-party race that was in the Path Builder app. One thing led to another while talking with friends where physiological details were discussed, and I just wanted to further build upon that. And given that I called this video Chapter 1, I do plan on at least one more video in this series regardless, unless this one just does super bad. But anything beyond Chapter 2 will depend on you guys. Again, gotta let me know you like it and want more, otherwise I will have no idea. I can't read minds, especially through a computer screen. Still, with all that said, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you next time in the void. Later.